Luis Matos just went on such a tear that he is the National League Player of the Week, the first Giant to be that since Brandon Belt in 2018. And the Giants rode that momentum to a sweep of the Rockies, 4 wins in a row. And suddenly they're back in contention and a lot more interesting.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, been hosting this show for over 5 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Check us out there if you haven't already. Please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. And coming up on today's show, we're going to talk a little bit about Mr. Luis Matos, the 22-year-old kid who just had an unbelievable week. I just can't even fathom, I can't even put into words what this guy did this week and weekend with setting all kinds of records and being the first player of the week for the Giants since 2018. That's 6 years ago, and he more than deserved it. So the not the MLB, it's MLB sent out a email that the Giants kind of forwarded it to the media, but they say, okay, the player of the week for the national. First of all, in the American League, it's Aaron Judge. And I don't often talk about RBI, but my goodness, Judge had 5 in his week and, otherwise went 10 for 20 with 3 homers. So good for him. But Matos, who's 22, again, hit 385, 2 homers. The crazy thing, 16 runs batted in the week. That's like a good month. That is a good month. And he did it in a week. He really did it in less than a week. 3 doubles, 3 runs scored. He only scored 3. He scored 3 runs, drove in 16, and he had a .731 slugging percentage. That's where that's kind of almost more important to me than the runs batted in, because the reason I don't talk about RBI much is because you got to have guys on base. Like if the Giants offense was just not putting runners on base for him, he wouldn't have those RBIs. You know what I'm saying? So, but they were on base and he did drive them in. And so it matters. It's a statistic that tells us what happened, but it's not necessarily predictive. It doesn't mean he's going to be having 300 RBI on the season, which is the pace that he's on. So he led the majors in RBI. It should say by how much, because there's no way anyone was even close during the week. We were looking at for the month, he's up there towards the very, very top for the month, and he did it all in the span of 6 games. And he tied for the NL lead in extra base hits, total bases 19, and tied for 3rd in hits, ranked 4th in slugging, tied for 8th in batting average, ranked 9th in OPS. It's really the RBI number that just jumps off the page. So he drove in 5 runs on Friday against the Rockies, and then he followed it up with 6 on Saturday, becoming the first player, I'm just reading this from the press release again, with back-to-back games of 5 or more RBI since Eloy Jimenez on August 8th and 9th, 2021. So we're not even talking about just Giants performances here. We're talking about overall in the major leagues. 2021, nobody has had consecutive 5 or more RBI games since Eloy Jimenez in 2021. That is just hard to fathom, really, and truthfully. And so continuing on, these are just great nuggets here. He became the youngest player in MLB history. Youngest player in MLB history with at least 5 RBI in back-to-back games. Boom. Crazy. And 4th player in Giants history to accomplish the feat, joining Jack Clark in 1982. Don, is it Mueller or it's the same spelling as Bill Miller, I think, but it's probably Mueller in 1951. apologies to him. Maybe he was a great player. I don't know. And Hall of Famer Bill Terry in 1932. Matos' 11 RBI during the Giants' 3-game set with Colorado tied a franchise record, joining Jack Clark, who drove home 11 against the Pirates from May 28th to 30th in 1992, and Jeff Kent, who did it against the Reds in July of 1998. So there you have it. And then, there are more nuggets even than that. And later on, we're going to talk about the relevance of this, because it'd be one thing if it was like, a 35-year-old Brandon Belt doing it. It'd be like, great, cool, amazing. But when you're a 22-year-old, not rookie anymore, actually, but 22-year-old who, you're filling in for a guy that the Giants invested $113 million plus a posting fee in Jung-Hoo Lee, who's going to be out for the season. And then you had Farhan Zaidi talking to the media and said that Matos became the prime candidate to play center field every day, and that Jung-Hoo Lee's rehab is a 6-month process. And then all of a sudden he goes out and does this. There's so much relevance there. So we will get into the relevance of this. And not just for Matos. We've got, Marco Luciano is up here and doing some things. And Elliot Ramos is up here doing some things. You've got Kyle Harrison, also 22 years old, up here doing some things. You've got a young Patrick Bailey. So all of a sudden, there's a lot of youth and they're performing. And that is what people have been waiting for a long time with the Giants. And so let me see if I can just find you any more nuggets on Matos through my notes. I have a huge list of notes here because this was just a historic kind of weekend for the Giants. So Matos matched the modern Giants franchise record for RBI in consecutive games. Jack Clark and Bill Terry also drove in 11 in a 2-game span. And by the way, the Giants had 9 doubles in a game for the first time since 1912 on Saturday, when they had 12 at Brooklyn. So I think they may have hit another double. And then also, by the way, Matt Chapman had a streak going. He reached base in 11 consecutive plate appearances. And so that, he was hitting right in front of Matos a lot of the time, I think. And so that, helps explain the RBI thing. When you have a guy on base literally every time in front of you, then that helps. So those are the Matos nuggets. So the franchise record, most RBI through 6 games to start a season at 15. And then the Giants tweeted that out. And then 16 minutes later, they said, LOL, add 2 more. So he had 17 in 6 games to start a season. 17 runs batted in 6 games. It's just ridiculous. He had more runs batted in 6 games than he had in all of last year in, 72 games? In 76 games, he had 14 runs batted in, and in 6 games, he had 17. So that's just wild and insane. And again, I don't often talk about RBI. If you're a regular listener of the show, this is the most I have talked about RBI in a show probably ever. And because it's a team dependent stat, you got to have guys on base, and that has nothing to do with Matos, but the opportunities were there. This is just so historic and such an incredible eye-popping number that I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't talk about it for a good 10 minutes to start the show. So coming up in just a minute, we are going to kind of turn our attention to the team at large and the sweep and what it means and where they stand in the standings, and look at some overall numbers as they exploded offensively and all of a sudden right back in contention, way more interesting. Overall offensive numbers looking good. So a lot to get into, and we'll get into it in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you in part by Policy Genius. Policy Genius, with them, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million in coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Their proprietary technology makes it easy to compare personalized quotes and policies from top-rated insurers side by side. Policy Genius's team of licensed experts is here to answer questions, handle paperwork, and help you make decisions with confidence. They work for you, not the insurance companies. From exploring coverage options to making policy adjustments as your life changes, Policy Genius is your advocate at every step. And Policy Genius is committed to your information remaining secure. Your security is their priority. They use industry-leading security practices to help keep your information safe. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonmlb or click the link in the description below to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonmlb. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by Yahoo Finance, which, guys, is something I use literally every day. Wouldn't it be great? This is what I was thinking before I got Yahoo Finance, and now that I do, yes, it is great to see all of your investment and retirement accounts in one place. With Yahoo Finance, you can consolidate your views from multiple accounts into one hub and access the expert analysis you need to tend to your entire portfolio with confidence. I have accounts all over the place. I have an online bank. I've got an investment account at one place. I've got an investment account at another place, and it's all consolidated into one easy to read page on Yahoo Finance, and I use it literally every day. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need all in one convenient place. That's what I love about it, is the consolidation. Rather than having all these accounts all over the place, not being able to put them together, add everything up. If you've got investments and whatnot, having them all combined into one where you can see the graph and all that is just a game changer for me. So with a community of over 90 million users each month, their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com. The #1 financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That is yahoofinance.com. All right, as promised, the big picture for the San Francisco Giants as they sweep the Colorado Rockies, as we said that they might. Of course they might. I said they could get swept, but I didn't think they would. And yeah, it's brought them back into contention. And with all these young players suddenly performing, it's made them far more interesting. This is a team that is now like a young team in a lot of ways. And what's going to happen when certain guys come back? They've had so many injuries, and we've got injury updates for you and some important players coming back that won't really affect the Matoses and Ramoses and Lucianos of the world, with like Blake Snell and Patrick Bailey. So anyway, by the way, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And so, yes, the Giants banded together and swept the Colorado Rockies, and there's just so much good to talk about here. And excitement. I mean, my goodness. So Matos did all of that with no strikeouts, by the way. He did end up striking out in the series finale, but he also didn't drive in any runs. So all that RBI stuff, all of that with no strike. He started the season with 17 runs batted in and no strikeouts. And so it's just, for a 22-year-old to be doing that is just very exciting. And overall, the Giants are right back in contention. I mean, the Padres kind of miraculously won today, unfortunately, against the Braves. They were down 5-0 in Atlanta, and they still found a way to win, which is annoying, but it's still obviously super early in the season. Giants could have been, if the Padres had lost two straight to the Braves, the Giants would have been ahead in the standings, I think. Let me think. The Padres would have been the Giants would have been in a wild card spot, even though they're 2 games under 500. And so that just speaks to the parity in the National League. And I will say this till I'm blue in the face, that the all you got to do is get in. I don't care. I mean, I do care. I don't want them under 500 or anything. Obviously, I want to see this team thrive, and they're better than an under 500 team, in my opinion. Like, there's too much talent on this team to be under 500. And so I think we're finally seeing them start to play that way. And ironically, it's been a lot of these young players who have gotten them there. But, guys like Blake Snell, Logan Webb, Patrick Bailey, and I mean, what Lamont Wade Jr. is doing, Tyro Estrada, good, solid veteran player, Matt Chapman, the track record he has, and we're finally seeing that come to fruition. Michael Conforto was doing really well. They had Jung-Hoo Lee. So they're going to need some, like in certain spots, like center field is wide open, and Farhan Zaidi said, you heard him there, I quoted him, or at least I read a tweet, or I think it was a tweet from Baggerly, that it's his job to lose. And certainly he did nothing to, he gave himself a lot of runway with that performance that we've seen over the past week. But regardless, the Giants are still 1.5 games out of a playoff spot, because, they'd be half a game back if the Padres didn't just come back from a 5-run deficit in Atlanta to beat the Braves 6-5. That's pretty wild and big momentum for the Padres, which you hate to see. But again, we've got, basically like 3/4 of the season left to play or so. And so, it's a little early to be looking at the standings that closely, but the Giants are the closest team to a playoff spot in the National League that's not in a playoff spot, and they're only 1.5 games back. And so for everyone who was ready to cancel the season, like in the last mailbag episode, or when I asked for mailbag questions, and there was a lot of doom and gloom and a lot of should they just give up or stop considering trying to be a playoff team, and my answer was no. And this is exactly why. I said they could sweep the Rockies and be 23-25, and now you're going to Pittsburgh and playing a Pirates team that's 22-26. Some good pitching on the Pirates, and they just called up the number 1 overall pick in Paul Skeens, who they're going to have to face in the series finale. So it's not going to be easy by any means in Pittsburgh. Then they're also going to play the Mets, who are 21-25. So a chance for the Giants to keep this momentum going, and we just don't know how it's going to go, but a chance to keep it all going. And so anyway, so they band together, they sweep the Rockies, who had won 7 straight. I said I didn't care about that. I said I didn't care that the Reds had lost whatever it was, like 7 straight coming into the series against the Giants. Reds beat the Giants in game 1. Giants won the last 2. And then they lost 2 out of 3 to the Dodgers, and then they sweep the Rockies. So they overall have a good homestand, going 6-3, which is what they really needed to do. After their 2 losses to the Dodgers, it felt like that third game with Logan Webb on the mound was critical, and they haven't lost since. Webb helped them win that game with, 6 shutout innings, and then they sweep the Colorado Rockies. They've won 4 straight. They won 3 straight for the first time all year. They were the only team that hadn't won 3 straight games. Somehow I didn't know that until after the fact. And so now they've won 4 straight. Wow. Oh my God. And it was their first sweep of the year. But having not won 3 straight all season, you'd think with something like that they would be one of the worst teams in the league. But on the contrary, they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're 7th in the National League. So at least they have that going for them. And again, I just think they're 15-10 at home. They're 8-15 on the road. And so that just kind of tells you the story. They've played well at home. They've played really poorly on the road. So here's a chance. You're going on the road. You've won 4 straight. You get an off day. You get to rest up a little bit. Should have Blake Snell coming back. He pitched another rehab outing and was absolutely dominant again. It's just incredible how good Blake Snell has been in his rehab outings. I don't have the note written down, but I think it was another hitless outing. So he basically was almost, I think, 9 innings in 2 rehab starts and like 17 strikeouts and 1 walk and just over no hits, no runs. I believe no runs, and just kind of totally dominated. And so I would expect he's probably gonna start at some point on this road trip. And if he can just come back and be like somewhat resembling Cy Young Blake Snell, and then you add that to what Logan Webb and Jordan Hicks and Kyle Harrison are doing, all of a sudden your rotation looks really good. They've got some really good performers in the bullpen, and the offense has been a question, but not lately. I mean, the offense, like overall now, has been above average. They've got a 103 weighted runs created plus as a team. Actually, let me refresh. I may have had this tab open for a while. So, yeah, and they're 11th in among all 30 teams for their position players in Fangraphs wins above replacement. And so their position player group all of a sudden is basically top 10, they're top 11 in the sport. And so really, I've said this a bunch, but oddly enough, the problem has been the pitching. And they're actually 9th in weighted runs created plus. 9th. They're top 9 in hitting is essentially what that means. And so, yeah, it doesn't really matter if it comes in bursts. It's overall, they're top 9 in overall offense. And so that's why you need about this many games before you start to draw conclusions, because, you know, stuff like this happens and it matters. Like Matt Chapman has stretches like this where he just all of a sudden reverts to being Matt Chapman, and like the numbers start to look more Matt Chapman-like, etc. And so that's kind of where we're at. And so hopefully they can keep it going and get some guys coming back. I mean, they're so banged up right now and they're still doing what they're doing right now. So anyway, coming up momentarily, I want to look at the big picture, both now and in the future, given all these young players. Like, what do they do when guys start coming back? Like, what do they do when Austin Slater and Michael Conforto are back? And you've got Elliot Ramos and Luis Matos doing what they're doing. And what about Marco Luciano versus Nick Ahmed and all that? So we'll look at performances and kind of evaluate what the options are and what I think is going to happen in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you in part by our good friends over at LinkedIn. Are you struggling to close deals? B2B selling is tougher than ever, and that's why I want to tell you about LinkedIn Sales Navigator. LinkedIn's Sales Navigator is a sales intelligence platform that helps professionals effectively prospect and engage high-value customers, drive higher revenue, and increase sales performance. Sales Navigator helps you target the right buyers, surface key signals such as job changes or which accounts you should prioritize, and shows you hidden allies so you can find those buyers that are most likely to convert. Fueled by LinkedIn's 1 billion member platform, Sales Navigator gives you the most up-to-date first-party data, enabling you to unlock conversations with the people that matter. Right now, you can try LinkedIn Sales Navigator and get a 60-day free trial at linkedin.com/lockedon. That's linkedin.com/lockedon for a 60-day free trial. Let LinkedIn Sales Navigator help you sell like a superstar today. Just go to linkedin.com/lockedon and get started. All right, as promised, the big picture, both now and in the future for the San Francisco Giants. I feel like things have changed in a hurry with the performance of some young players, and so we'll look at outside of Matos, although we'll look at Matos and how projection systems have changed on him. Just like you have a week like this and the projection systems are going to pay attention, especially when you're 22 and relatively unproven. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the Fire TV, free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Also a reminder, you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. And also a reminder about Postcast with Eric Engel. Check out Locked On Sports San Francisco on YouTube And after pretty much every single Giants game, Eric Engel goes live, like right after the game. And you can join the conversation, get in on the action, instant reaction, all that stuff, live after every game on Locked On Sports San Francisco on YouTube. And then that show also goes onto this podcast feed everywhere except the Locked On Giants YouTube channel, because it's primarily or only on Locked On Sports San Francisco on YouTube. But for if you want to just listen later, it's on this channel, and the title will always say Postcast at the beginning in all capital letters. So anyway, just a reminder about that. It's great. Check it out. So anyway, what does this all mean? Like the Giants' hot streak, and I said that they're ninth in hitting. When I say weighted runs created plus, 100 is average. They're at 103. But that number is ninth best in baseball. So there's not a lot of teams that have been like super above average. There are 7 teams that have been 13 or more % above average. But then, there's a lot of teams that have been just above, the Giants, slightly above average, and then everybody else worse than that. So at number 9 for the Giants. And when we look at the kind of overall performances, LaMonte Wade Jr., I mean, my goodness, he hasn't hit for much power, but he's got a 466 on base percentage and has played good first base defense and has put up 1.6 Fangraphs wins above replacement, which leads the Giants. Patrick Bailey is second, even though he's played 20 fewer games than LaMonte Wade Jr., 21 fewer games than Tyro Estrada, who's tied with him at 1.1 Fangraphs wins above replacement. Matt Chapman, with his 11 straight times reaching base, all of a sudden he put up like basically a full win above replacement in a couple of days per Fangraphs, and all of a sudden has a league average offensive line, even though it doesn't look very pretty. 239 batting average, 301 on base, 389 slugging. It's nothing to get excited about, but that is exactly a 100 weighted runs created plus, which means league average exactly. Elliot Ramos cut his strikeout rate. Like last time we talked, I was concerned a little bit. The strikeout rate was like 37%, but it's down to 29.5%, and he's just continued to play pretty well. I mean, he's hitting, the overall numbers are good. If we're looking at offense, he's hit 293, 341 on base, 439 slugging. It does come with an average on balls in play of 407, which is unsustainably high. But projection systems have him coming in roughly league average by a lot of them. There's some that are like a little below average, but he's also been kind of amazing at times on defense. Overall, defensive runs saved has him at +4 for the year. Outs above average or runs above average, which is a StatCast metric, at +1 in the outfield this season. So I don't know. I mean, when, the way that Austin Slater wasn't playing well and the way that Michael Conforto was, it's like all of a sudden you legitimately do start thinking about trades for, it's tough. I mean, it's going to be tough to have to send somebody down. If Matos and Ramos are continuing to play well, first of all, I think Matos is the guy who stays. So specifically, it would be tough to send down Elliot Ramos if he's playing like this. And it would be a bad look, especially if it was Austin Slater being the guy that they replace him with, given the struggles this season so far of Austin Slater. I still do think Austin Slater is better than what we've seen by a lot, but nonetheless, I mean, when someone's producing and you need to win, it's hard to justify sending them down. And then Nick Ahmed, he's played well defensively, but he really hasn't hit. 236 average, 274 on base, 291 slugging. There's just not a lot there. That's a 65 weighted runs created plus, 35% below average offensively. Whereas Marco Luciano, you look up and he's only struck out 21.4% of the time. That's roughly league average. And he's hit 333 with a 429 on base and 500 slugging. Albeit with, again, it's 4 games and a 444 batting average on balls in play. So it's a tiny sample. His walk rate has continued to stay high, though. And, I'm just looking through. It's just it's Matos, Luciano and Ramos, and they've all done exceptionally well. And specifically, I mean, I think Jung-Hoo Lee's, Jung-Hoo Lee being out for the season means one of Matos and Ramos is going to basically play the rest of the season, but in the major leagues. And I think it's more likely to be Matos. And I'll talk about the projections for Matos in a second. For Luciano, by the way, they're not as pretty, but, how about the defense? I mean, I think he's been fine defensively. The metrics agree in a small sample. Defensive runs saved, 0. Outs above average, 0. So that's, average defense. And you'll take that out of the, again, 22-year-old. It's just crazy. We're talking 22-year-old Luciano, 22-year-old Matos. I believe Kyle Harrison is also 22. And so then you look at Patrick Bailey, and it's just kind of crazy all of a sudden that, Kyle Harrison is 22. And lastly, the projections for Matos, who's 22 and just turned 22 in late January. Every single projection system on Fangraphs has him as average or better offensively moving forward. And to have those kind of projections at this age is just exciting. And so it's time to get excited about Luis Matos, if you weren't already, based on what he just did in the span of less than a week. But it is amazing how things can change on a dime in a baseball season. That's what I've been saying. People wanted to overreact to opening day. It's like, no, you got to wait. Baseball is a marathon, not a sprint. And there's a lot of baseball left, and we don't know how it's going to play out. For all we know, by the end of the season, Luis Matos has established himself as a star in this league. We don't know. But the muscle he added and the way he's played, it's just exciting. And so day off today, hopefully he can keep it going. And coming up tomorrow, either Sully from Locked On MLB, we're continuing to try to work on our schedules and try to line something up, or more mailbag questions. I'll probably put out a fresh prompt because last time I put one out, it was all doom and gloom, and this time it's going to be different. So look out on Twitter this evening for the prompt if I'm not able to work out something with Sully timing-wise. Anyway, once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much, so thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. Congrats again to Luis Matos, National League Player of the Week, first Giant to do so since 2018. Anyway, thanks again for listening. Amazing weekend of Giants baseball, and you are now Locked On Giants.